What if the person sleeping next to you is slowly becoming a stranger, and you are too tired, too proud, or too afraid to reach first? In this real English story from my life in the United States, I will share how my marriage almost drifted apart, how silence grew louder than love, and how one small sentence changed everything, maybe before it's too late for you too. We almost lost each other in America. What if building a new life in America slowly costs you the very love you came here to protect? Not because of betrayal. Not because of drama. But because two tired people stop talking, stop listening, and quietly begin growing apart. That was us. And if you are here for real English story practice, I want you to listen slowly, breathe slowly, and maybe see your own reflection inside my story. When we first moved to the United States, everything felt bright and possible. New roads. New systems. New rules. We were immigrants chasing stability, safety, and opportunity. During the day, we were strong. We worked hard. We smiled at neighbors. We learned how taxes worked, how health insurance worked, how credit scores worked. At night, we were exhausted. Exhaustion is dangerous in marriage. Science tells us that chronic stress increases cortisol levels. High cortisol reduces patience and empathy. In simple words, when you are stressed, your brain goes into survival mode. And in survival mode, connection feels less important than control. You stop asking, "How are you feeling?" and start asking, "Did you pay the bill?" At first, the distance was small. So small we did not notice it. We stopped having long conversations at dinner. We replaced them with short updates. How was work? Busy. Okay. 3 sentences. End of story. You see how simple English can also carry heavy emotion. Busy. Okay. Fine. These are small words. But small words can hide big loneliness. In America, success is often measured by productivity. More hours. More income. More achievement. We believed that if we worked harder, our future would be safer. And yes, financially, we improved. We bought better furniture. We upgraded our car. We felt proud. But something else was quietly downgrading. Our emotional intimacy. There is a concept in psychology called emotional bids. It means small attempts to connect. A joke. A sigh. A simple comment like, "Look at the sunset." When your partner responds with attention, connection grows. When your partner ignores it, connection weakens. We began missing each other's bids. She would say, "I'm really tired lately." And I would answer, "You should sleep earlier." Logical. Practical. Completely unhelpful. What she needed was not advice. She needed presence. And I was not present. Maybe you understand this. Maybe you also live in a country where survival feels urgent. When you are building a life from zero, love can feel like a luxury. But here is the truth I learned too late. Love is not a luxury. It is the oxygen. Without it, everything else slowly suffocates. Months passed. No big fights. No screaming. Just quiet. Quiet dinners. Quiet car rides. Quiet nights. One evening, I noticed something small but powerful. We were sitting on the same couch, but our bodies were turned slightly away from each other. Not dramatically. Just a few degrees. But emotionally, it felt like miles. Have you ever slept next to someone and felt alone? That question hurt me. In this channel, we practice slow English listening and speaking. So let me say this clearly, growing apart does not happen in one day. It happens in tiny, repeated moments of disconnection. Neuroscience shows that habits shape neural pathways. The more we repeat a behavior, the stronger it becomes. If you repeat distance, distance becomes normal. If you repeat silence, silence becomes safe. And safe silence is dangerous. One night, after another long workday, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My mind was racing. Mortgage. Deadlines. Children's school. Immigration paperwork. Responsibility felt heavy. I told myself I was doing all this for my family. But a quiet voice inside me asked, if you lose the relationship, what exactly are you protecting? That was the first crack in my pride. In America, independence is celebrated. Handle it yourself. Be strong. Don't be weak. I absorbed that mindset deeply. I thought vulnerability meant failure. I thought saying I'm scared would make me smaller. But research from relationship psychology says the opposite. Vulnerability builds trust. When one partner opens up emotionally, it invites safety. It signals, I trust you with my truth. And I had stopped sharing my truth. Instead of saying, I feel overwhelmed, I said nothing. Instead of saying, I miss us, I stayed quiet. Silence felt easier in the moment. But silence accumulates interest, like a credit card debt of emotion. One day, you wake up and the cost is shocking. There was a specific evening I cannot forget. We were cleaning the kitchen. Just normal life. Plates. Water. Soap. And suddenly I looked at her and felt something unexpected, fear. Not fear of losing my job. Not fear of failing financially. Fear of losing her. It was not dramatic. She was right there. But emotionally, I felt her drifting. And for the first time, I asked myself the question that shapes this entire video series. Are we growing old together, or growing apart? That question is simple English. But it carries weight. Growing old together means daily choice. Growing apart means daily neglect. Neither happens by accident. If you are listening right now because you feel tired, unmotivated, maybe even disconnected from your own goals, I understand. Sometimes we lose motivation in English learning the same way we lose motivation in relationships. We expect passion to carry us forever. When passion fades, we think something is wrong. But discipline, repetition, and small honest moments are what rebuild both language and love. At that moment in my kitchen, I realized something painful. I had been protecting my ego more than my marriage. I wanted to be right. I wanted to be respected. I wanted to be seen as strong. But strength without tenderness becomes cold. That night, nothing changed dramatically. No big speech. No emotional movie scene. Just awareness. Just the uncomfortable truth sitting in my chest. We had not cheated. We had not betrayed. We had simply stopped choosing each other intentionally. And that realization was terrifying. Because if distance can grow quietly, healing must also begin quietly. This is where our story truly begins. Not with romance. Not with passion. But with a question. What love will you protect today? The American dream was not pink. Let me tell you something no one puts in the immigration brochures. The American dream is not always bright and shiny. Sometimes it is gray. Sometimes it is cold. Sometimes it is two people standing in the same kitchen, financially stable but emotionally tired. When we first arrived in the United States, everything felt urgent. We had paperwork to complete, jobs to secure, systems to understand. Life in America moves fast. Faster than we expected. Faster than our emotions could adjust. During the first year, we were in survival mode. And survival mode can look impressive from the outside. We worked long hours. We said yes to every opportunity. We learned new skills. We improved our English little by little. We told friends back home, it's going well. And technically, it was. But here is something important for you, especially if you are learning English through real stories. Language and life both require emotional energy. And emotional energy is limited. Psychologists call this decision fatigue. Every day in a new country, you make hundreds of micro-decisions. How do I respond to this email? Did I understand the tone correctly? What does this policy mean? Am I using the right words in this meeting? Is my accent clear enough? Your brain works overtime. Research in cognitive psychology shows that when the brain is overloaded with adaptation tasks, empathy decreases. You become more task-oriented and less emotionally responsive. You don't mean to ignore your partner. You are just tired. That was us. We were proud of being strong immigrants. We handled problems independently. We figured out taxes. We built credit history. We navigated healthcare appointments. We learned about retirement plans. We were responsible adults in a powerful country. But responsibility without rest turns into resentment. At first, the cultural differences felt exciting. In America, people are direct. Conversations are efficient. Time is valuable. Individual goals are encouraged. We admired that. We adopted that mindset. Slowly, without noticing, we brought that efficiency into our marriage. Conversations became shorter. Emotions became compressed. Instead of asking, "How are you really feeling?" we asked, "What's the plan?" Efficiency is great for business. Not always great for intimacy. There was also financial pressure. Even when income increases, so do expenses. Rent, insurance, school costs, car payments. We kept telling ourselves, just a few more years of hard work. Then we can relax. But here is the problem with that thinking. Connection cannot be postponed indefinitely. According to relationship research, couples who delay emotional investment during high-stress periods often struggle later because habits form quickly. The brain builds patterns. If your pattern is distance during stress, stress will always trigger distance. We were building that pattern. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home excited about a professional achievement. I had received positive feedback from my manager. In American workplace culture, recognition matters. I felt proud. I expected celebration. Instead, she looked exhausted. The children had been difficult. She had handled everything alone that day. When I shared my news, she smiled politely. "That's good," she said. "That's good." Two simple words. But I felt disappointed. Later, I realized something uncomfortable. I wanted emotional support from her, but I had not been offering the same support consistently. I wanted applause, but I had not been listening carefully to her quiet struggles. This imbalance grows silently. In the United States, achievement is visible. Promotions, raises, certifications. But emotional labor is invisible. No one gives awards for listening patiently. No one posts on social media about choosing kindness during exhaustion. And we began investing more in visible success than in visible connection. Climate also played a role. The winters were colder than we expected. Long, dark evenings. Less sunlight. Research shows that reduced sunlight can impact mood through lower serotonin levels. Subtle sadness can increase irritability. Irritability can increase distance. We thought our tension was about schedules. Sometimes it was simply about exhaustion and biology. Another factor was identity. Moving to America forced us to redefine ourselves. Who are we in this new system? Are we still the same people? When identity feels unstable, people cling to control. And control often replaces vulnerability. Instead of saying, "I feel lost," we focused on productivity. Instead of admitting, "I miss how we used to talk," we optimized our calendars. And that optimization slowly removed spontaneity. I remember one weekend when we planned everything carefully. Grocery shopping at 9 a.m., laundry at 11 a.m. Children's activities at 2 p.m., budget review at 7 p.m. The schedule was perfect. But we never laughed. That realization scared me more than any financial risk. In many YouTube motivational stories about moving to America, the focus is on success, hustle, and growth. And yes, growth happened for us. But growth in one area does not guarantee growth in marriage. Sometimes one part of your life expands while another quietly shrinks. If you are listening to improve your English listening skills, notice the vocabulary here: stress, adaptation, identity, resentment, connection. These are not just words. They are experiences. And maybe you recognize them in your own life. One night, after the children were asleep, we sat at the dining table reviewing expenses. Numbers on a spreadsheet. Serious faces. Responsible adults. Suddenly, I asked a simple question: "Are you happy?" She paused. That pause felt longer than any silence before. She did not answer immediately. And in that silence, I realized something deeper than financial anxiety was present. We were achieving the American dream. But we were slowly losing the emotional dream. And that is when the real fear began. Because success cannot replace intimacy. And if we continued this way, we might wake up one day successful, and alone. The American dream was not pink. It was complex. It was demanding. It was beautiful and brutal at the same time. And it was testing whether we would grow old together, or grow apart. When silence became louder than arguments. Most people think relationships break because of loud fights. Shouting. Doors slamming. Dramatic words like "I'm done." But what if the real danger is much quieter? What if the real threat to growing old together is not anger, but silence? That is what happened to us in America. There were no explosive arguments. No scandal. No betrayal. From the outside, we looked stable. Responsible. Mature. We paid our bills on time. We attended school meetings. We posted smiling family photos. If someone had asked, "Are you okay?" we would have said, "Yes, of course." But inside the house, something subtle was shifting. Silence was becoming our default language. It did not start dramatically. It started with small moments of emotional postponement. She would begin a sentence like, "I've been thinking about something," and I would answer, "Can we talk later? I have an early meeting tomorrow." Later rarely came. I would say, "Work has been stressful lately." She would nod and respond, "You always handle it." That sounded supportive. But it also ended the conversation. We were efficient communicators. Not intimate communicators. In relationship psychology, there is a concept called stonewalling. It does not mean yelling. It means emotional withdrawal. When someone feels overwhelmed or defensive, they shut down. They protect themselves by becoming neutral. Calm. Distant. That was us. And here is the tricky part: stonewalling often feels safe. There is no conflict. No drama. Just peace. But it is not real peace. It is emotional avoidance. Our nights changed first. We used to talk in bed. Not always deep conversations. Sometimes random thoughts. A funny memory. A dream for the future. Those small conversations built connection. Slowly, phones replaced words. Scrolling replaced sharing. Screens replaced eye contact. Have you ever been physically close to someone but mentally far away? That was our bedroom. One night, I noticed we were lying back to back. Not intentionally. Just naturally. Two bodies facing opposite directions. It felt symbolic. Like our physical position was expressing what our hearts could not say. I wanted to turn toward her. But I did not. Why? Because pride is quiet but powerful. There is a psychological mechanism called rejection sensitivity. When someone fears emotional rejection, they avoid vulnerability. They wait for the other person to move first. It becomes a silent standoff. Each person thinking, if I reach out and they don't respond warmly, it will hurt more. So nobody moves. Silence wins. In the United States, independence is admired. Be strong. Don't be needy. Handle your emotions. I internalized that message deeply. I thought asking for reassurance would make me weak. So instead of saying, I feel distant from you, I convinced myself everything was fine. But our bodies were telling the truth. Research in neuroscience shows that emotional disconnection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Your nervous system does not clearly separate them. That tight feeling in your chest when someone ignores you? That is not imagination. It is biology. Some evenings, I felt restless. Irritated without clear reason. Small things annoyed me. The way dishes were placed. The tone of a simple question. Looking back, I understand something important. Irritation is often disguised loneliness. We were not angry at each other. We were starving for connection. But instead of asking directly, we protected our egos. There is something especially dangerous about stable dissatisfaction. When things are not terrible, you do not act. You adapt. You normalize. You tell yourself, every marriage has phases. And yes, that is true. But phases require awareness. Without awareness, phases become patterns. Months passed. Family gatherings came and went. We smiled in photos. We functioned well as a team. We coordinated schedules like professionals. Efficient. Organized. Respectful. But emotional warmth was decreasing. I remember one specific car ride. The children were in the back seat. Music was playing softly. She was looking out the window. I wanted to say something meaningful. Something honest. Instead, I asked, "Did you confirm the appointment for next week?" Logistics felt safer than vulnerability. Later that night, lying in bed, I asked myself a hard question. When did we stop being curious about each other? Curiosity is a sign of love. When you are curious, you ask, what are you feeling? What are you dreaming about? What scares you? When curiosity disappears, assumptions grow. I began assuming I knew her thoughts. She began assuming she knew mine. Assumptions are efficient, but they are not intimate. In this real English story practice, notice how simple vocabulary can describe complex emotion: silence, distance, pride, curiosity, fear. You do not need complicated grammar to express deep truth. One evening, after another quiet dinner, I felt something shift inside me. It was not anger. It was not sadness. It was fear. Fear that if we continued like this, one day we would wake up as roommates. Polite. Functional. Emotionally separate. Growing apart does not require betrayal. It only requires neglect. And neglect often looks like busyness. That realization hurt. Because I had been telling myself I was working hard for my family. Providing. Protecting. Building a future in America. And I was. But I was not protecting the emotional bridge between us. We were not fighting. We were fading. And fading is harder to notice than breaking. That night, lying back to back again, I stared into the darkness and felt the weight of a question pressing on my chest. If silence continues, who will reach first? And what happens if neither of us does? The ego that didn't want to lose. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When you argue in your mind with someone you love, are you trying to understand them, or are you trying to win? That question changed everything for me. By the time silence had settled into our home, something else had quietly grown inside me: ego. Not the loud, arrogant kind. The quiet kind. The kind that whispers, "Why should I be the one to start?" The kind that says, if they care, they will come to me first. In America, I learned to be strong. At work, strength meant confidence. Clear opinions. Decisive leadership. Own your space. Stand your ground. Those phrases sound powerful. And in a professional environment, they are useful. But in marriage, standing your ground can slowly become building a wall. Psychology explains this with a simple concept: self-protection. When we feel emotionally unsafe or unappreciated, our brain activates defense mode. Defense mode does not shout. It calculates. It evaluates risk. It asks, if I open up, will I get hurt? So instead of reaching for connection, we protect our pride. Pride feels strong. But it is often fear wearing a suit. During those months of distance, I replayed small disappointments in my mind. Moments when I felt unsupported. Moments when I felt misunderstood. My brain built a quiet case against her. She didn't notice how tired I was. She didn't celebrate my effort. She didn't ask how I was really doing. But here is the uncomfortable truth: she probably had her own list. In cognitive psychology, there is something called negativity bias. Our brains remember negative experiences more clearly than positive ones. It is a survival mechanism. Thousands of years ago, remembering danger kept humans alive. Today, that same mechanism can damage relationships. I remembered every small emotional disappointment. I forgot many quiet acts of love. That imbalance shaped my behavior. One evening, she tried to talk about feeling overwhelmed with parenting and work. I listened, but my mind was busy defending itself. Instead of empathy, I felt irritation. Doesn't she see how hard I'm working? I thought. That thought was not evil. It was human. But it was also selfish. The problem with ego in relationships is subtle. It convinces you that you are protecting fairness. But often, you are protecting identity. I had built an identity in America: provider, problem solver, resilient immigrant. I wanted recognition for that identity. When I did not feel recognized, I withdrew emotionally. There is a term in relationship science called mutual escalation. It does not require shouting. It happens when both partners feel unseen and respond with withdrawal. Each person waits for the other to repair the connection. Imagine two people standing on opposite sides of a small gap. The gap is not wide yet. But both are waiting for the other to step forward. No one moves. Over time, the ground slowly shifts. The gap widens. Not because of betrayal. Because of hesitation. I began asking myself, why should I always be the one to start the difficult conversation? That question felt justified. Balanced. Logical. But another question slowly replaced it. Do I want to be right, or do I want to be close? Those two goals are often in conflict. In many cultures, including American culture, independence is respected. Don't depend too much on anyone. Maintain your dignity. Those ideas sound empowering. But in intimate relationships, interdependence is essential. We are wired for connection. Neuroscience shows that secure attachment reduces stress hormones and increases feelings of safety. Safety grows when someone risks vulnerability. And vulnerability always feels unfair at first. One night, after another emotionally distant day, I noticed something inside my chest: tightness. Not anger. Not sadness. Just tension. I realized my body was reacting to long-term emotional defense. Chronic emotional defense keeps your nervous system slightly activated. You are not fighting. But you are not relaxed either. You are alert. Guarded. Evaluating. That is not how love is supposed to feel. Love should feel like exhaling. But we were holding our breath. I thought about the question that had been echoing in my mind since that evening in the kitchen: are we growing old together, or growing apart? Growing apart is rarely dramatic. It is strategic. It is slow. It is built on repeated decisions not to soften. Ego loves distance. Distance feels like control. If I don't show need, I can't be rejected. That is the illusion. But here is the paradox. When you refuse to show need, you also refuse to receive comfort. You protect yourself from pain. You also block intimacy. In this real English story practice, notice the simple vocabulary again: pride, fear, distance, control, closeness. These are everyday words, but they describe deep human experiences. You do not need complex grammar to speak honestly. One specific memory stands out. We were sitting at the dining table after the children had gone to bed. The house was quiet. I felt the urge to say something vulnerable. I feel like we're drifting. The sentence formed in my mind. But I did not say it. Why? Because another voice said, if she disagrees, you will look foolish. If she says she feels fine, you will look dramatic. So I swallowed the sentence. That moment taught me something important. Ego is often just fear of embarrassment. And fear of embarrassment can destroy years of love. Eventually, I realized a painful truth. We were not stuck because we lacked love. We were stuck because neither of us wanted to risk losing first. We were playing a silent game. Who will soften first? Who will admit weakness first? Who will reach across the growing gap? And the longer we waited, the more the gap widened. In that quiet dining room, I understood something clearly. If I continue protecting my pride, I might lose the person I promised to grow old with. And suddenly, winning did not feel important anymore. Connection did. But wanting connection is not the same as acting on it. The real question was no longer, who is right? The real question became, who is brave enough to begin? The question that wouldn't let me sleep. Have you ever been so tired that your body shuts down, but your mind refuses to rest? That was me one winter night in America, staring at the ceiling at 2:17 a.m., while one question repeated in my head like a broken alarm: are we growing old together, or growing apart? The house was quiet. The heater hummed softly. My wife was sleeping beside me, but emotionally, it felt like we were separated by something invisible and thick. Not anger. Not hatred. Just distance. And distance is confusing. Because nothing terrible has happened. You cannot point to one dramatic moment and say, that's when it broke. Instead, it feels like sand slipping slowly through your fingers. That night, I stopped blaming stress. I stopped blaming work. I stopped blaming immigration pressure. I asked a harder question. What is my role in this? In psychology, there is a concept called locus of control. It describes whether you believe your life is controlled by external forces or your own actions. For months, I had been operating with an external focus. Work is stressful. America is demanding. Life is expensive. The kids are busy. We're tired. All true. But also incomplete. Because inside every situation, there is still personal choice. And I realized something uncomfortable. I had been waiting for the environment to change before I changed. I told myself, when work slows down, we'll reconnect. When things are more stable, we'll talk more. When the children are older, it will be easier. But connection postponed is connection weakened. Neuroscience tells us that relationships are shaped by repeated microinteractions. Small daily exchanges create neural associations. If most of our exchanges are transactional, schedules, logistics, responsibilities, then the brain begins associating the partner with stress instead of comfort. That realization hit me hard. Had I unintentionally trained my brain to see my marriage as another responsibility? Another task? Another obligation? That thought hurt. Because love should feel like refuge, not pressure. Around 3 a.m., I quietly asked myself a simple sentence in English: what love will you protect today? It sounds poetic. But in that moment, it felt urgent. Protecting love does not mean defending your position. It means actively choosing behaviors that nurture connection. And the first behavior I realized I needed was honesty. Not dramatic honesty. Simple honesty. The kind that says, I don't feel close to you lately. For someone like me, that sentence felt terrifying. I had built my identity in the United States around strength and competence. At work, I was reliable, calm, solution-focused. I did not complain. I performed. But performance is not intimacy. Intimacy requires emotional transparency. Studies in relationship research consistently show that couples who engage in vulnerable communication report higher long-term satisfaction. Not because they solve every problem, but because vulnerability builds emotional safety. And safety creates closeness. The problem? Vulnerability feels risky. My mind immediately produced counterarguments. What if she says she feels fine? What if she agrees and says she's unhappy? What if the conversation makes things worse? Fear creates powerful what-if stories. But silence creates certainty of distance. As I lay there listening to the quiet house, I realized something very simple. Doing nothing was also a decision. And doing nothing was not neutral. It was movement away. Sometimes we imagine that relationships collapse because of big mistakes. Affairs. Lies. Betrayals. But many marriages erode because of inaction. Inaction is quiet. It looks responsible. It feels safe. But it slowly removes warmth. I thought about our early years. Long conversations. Shared dreams. Laughter in small apartments. We had less money, less security, fewer guarantees, but more emotional presence. Why? Because we were curious about each other. Somewhere in the pursuit of stability in America, we had reduced curiosity and increased efficiency. Efficiency is useful. Curiosity is essential. Around 4 a.m., I sat up in bed and looked at her sleeping peacefully. For a moment, I saw not the partner I felt distant from, but the person who had trusted me enough to move across the world together. The person who had endured cultural shock, language challenges, financial uncertainty, with me. That perspective shifted something inside me. Psychologists call this cognitive reframing. It means intentionally viewing a situation from a different angle. Instead of focusing on what I lacked, I focused on what we had survived together. Suddenly, the narrative changed. We were not enemies. We were two exhausted teammates who had forgotten how to rest together. That reframe reduced my defensiveness. It softened my pride. It replaced accusation with empathy. And empathy is the first bridge back. If you are listening to this for English listening practice, notice how simple the sentences are. I was tired. I was afraid. I missed us. You do not need complicated vocabulary to express deep emotion. Clear, slow English can carry powerful truth. As dawn approached, I made a quiet decision. Not a dramatic promise. Not a grand plan. Just one small commitment. I will start the conversation. Not to win. Not to accuse. Not to analyze. Just to reconnect. Because if we truly wanted to grow old together, someone had to choose vulnerability over pride. And maybe that someone had to be me. That night, I did not fix our marriage. But I stopped pretending it was fine. And sometimes, awareness is the first real act of love. The winter that forced us to stop. If you have never experienced a real American winter, let me describe it slowly. The sky turns gray at 4 in the afternoon. The air feels sharp in your lungs. The trees stand empty, like outlines of something that used to be alive. Everything becomes quieter. Slower. Colder. That winter became the turning point of our marriage. It started with something ordinary. My workload increased unexpectedly. A major project at work required longer hours. Deadlines tightened. Meetings stretched late into the evening. I told myself, this is temporary. Just push through. At the same time, she was juggling her own responsibilities, children, schedules, part-time work, home management. We were both running on low emotional energy. Then the weather changed. Colder days. Less sunlight. Fewer outdoor activities. We stayed inside more. And when you stay inside physically, you also stay inside emotionally, unless you make an effort not to. Research shows that reduced sunlight during winter can affect mood through lower serotonin levels. This can increase fatigue and mild depressive symptoms. When two people are already emotionally distant, seasonal stress can quietly magnify that gap. That is exactly what happened. One Friday evening, after another exhausting week, we had a small disagreement. It was not dramatic. Something about money. Or scheduling. Or responsibilities. I don't even remember the topic clearly. What I remember is the tone. Her voice felt sharper than usual. Mine felt colder. We were not shouting. But the tension in the room felt heavy. The children noticed. They became quieter. That moment disturbed me more than the argument itself. Children are emotional mirrors. They sense distance even when adults pretend everything is fine. Later that night, the house felt unusually still. Snow had started falling outside. Thick. Silent. Beautiful. And isolating. We were sitting at opposite ends of the couch. No phones. No distractions. Just distance. I realized something important in that silence. Winter removes distractions. In summer, you can escape tension with activities. Walks. Trips. Social events. In winter, you face what is inside the house. And inside our house was unspoken frustration. There is a concept in psychology called emotional flooding. When stress accumulates without release, small triggers feel overwhelming. The nervous system becomes sensitive. Neutral comments feel critical. Simple requests feel demanding. That night, I recognized emotional flooding in both of us. But instead of reacting defensively, something different happened. Maybe it was the long night of reflection weeks earlier. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was fear. I felt tired of protecting my pride. I looked at her sitting there, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. And for the first time in months, I did not see an opponent. I saw a partner who was also struggling. Empathy returned quietly. I remembered what I had learned about vulnerability building safety. I remembered the question that would not let me sleep: what love will you protect today? Protecting love in winter means choosing warmth intentionally. So I moved. Not dramatically. Just physically. I shifted closer on the couch. That movement felt small. But emotionally, it felt enormous. She noticed. She did not move away. For a few seconds, we sat in awkward proximity. The air felt fragile. Like thin ice. Then I said something simple. I think we're both really tired. It was not an accusation. It was not a solution. It was an observation. And sometimes, shared reality is the first step toward reconnection. She exhaled. Yes, she said softly. I am. There it was. Not anger. Not blame. Just honesty. In communication theory, this is called alignment. When two people acknowledge the same emotional truth, defensiveness decreases. The nervous system relaxes slightly. The conversation becomes safer. I continued, slowly. Carefully. I don't think we're fighting each other. I think we're fighting stress. That sentence changed the atmosphere. Instead of being two opponents, we became two teammates again. She looked at me differently. Not suspicious. Not guarded. Just tired and open. I miss how we used to talk, she said quietly. That sentence could have hurt weeks earlier. It could have felt like criticism. But in that winter silence, it felt like invitation. Neuroscience shows that when vulnerability is met with empathy instead of defense, oxytocin, the bonding hormone, increases. You literally feel safer in the presence of the other person. I felt that shift physically. My shoulders relaxed. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, something thawed. We talked for over an hour. Not about logistics. Not about budgets. About feelings. About fear. About how both of us had been waiting for the other to reach first. And here is the truth, we were both afraid. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of conflict. Afraid that maybe the distance meant something permanent. But that winter night proved something important. Distance does not always mean the end. Sometimes it means exhaustion. Sometimes it means two strong people who forgot how to be soft. The American winter forced us to stop running. It removed distraction. It exposed emotional coldness. But it also gave us the chance to build warmth intentionally. If you are listening to improve your English listening skills, notice how simple these sentences are. I miss us. I feel tired. I don't want to lose you. Simple words. Deep meaning. That night did not fix everything. But it broke the pattern of silence. And once silence is broken, healing becomes possible. As the snow covered the streets outside, I realized something powerful. Winter can freeze a relationship. Or it can slow you down long enough to save it. And for the first time in months, I believed we still had a chance to grow old together, instead of growing apart. The psychology of almost quitting. Have you ever sat alone, completely drained, and quietly asked yourself, what if I just stopped trying? Not because you're lazy. Not because you don't care. But because you're exhausted from pushing forward without seeing results. From working on your goals in silence. From trying to build a better life while feeling like nothing is moving. If that thought has crossed your mind, then this moment, this exact emotional breaking point, might be more important than you realize. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes from chasing personal growth. It's the weight of self-discipline when nobody is watching. It's staying consistent when motivation disappears. It's waking up early to work on your dreams while the world keeps scrolling. And sometimes, in the middle of that effort, doubt creeps in. You start questioning your progress. You compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. You wonder if success is just for other people. This is the phase no one posts about. No one celebrates the slow days. No one applauds the quiet discipline. But this is where mental strength is built. Every real transformation has a breaking point. Not a dramatic collapse, but a subtle internal shift. It's the moment when comfort feels safer than ambition. When average feels easier than growth. When quitting feels logical. And yet, this is exactly where winners are made. The urge to quit often appears right before expansion. Your brain is wired for safety. Growth feels uncertain. Change feels risky. So when you stretch beyond your old limits, your mind sends warning signals. This is too hard. Maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you started too late. But those thoughts are not proof that you're failing. They are proof that you're evolving. Overcoming failure isn't loud. It's not a dramatic comeback montage. It's quiet consistency. It's choosing to continue when your emotions say stop. Success habits are built in these invisible moments, when nobody is clapping, when progress feels slow, when results are not immediate. Here's the mindset shift that changes everything. Stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this today?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming by doing this anyway?" Feelings fluctuate. Identity compounds. If you build the identity of someone who does not quit, your progress no longer depends on motivation. It depends on self-respect. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation shows up when things are exciting. Discipline shows up when things are ordinary. If you rely on motivation, your growth will be inconsistent. If you rely on systems, habits, and self-discipline, your success becomes predictable. Most people quit at the edge of discomfort. Not at their limit, at their discomfort. They mistake temporary exhaustion for permanent incapability. But discomfort is not a stop sign. It's a signal that you are stretching. The breaking point feels like weakness, but it's actually a doorway. It forces you to decide who you are. Are you someone who stops when it's hard? Or someone who stays when it's uncertain? This decision shapes your future more than talent ever will. Think about this: every hard day you've survived has built resilience. Every setback has strengthened your emotional endurance. You have already overcome challenges you once thought would break you. The fact that you are still here, still trying, still searching for motivation, means something powerful. You haven't given up yet. And that matters more than you think. Success is rarely one giant leap. It's one small decision repeated daily. To get up when snoozing feels easier. To focus when distractions are louder. To stay consistent when results are invisible. That's how productivity turns into progress. That's how progress turns into transformation. You don't need to feel unstoppable. You just need to refuse to stop. The world often highlights dramatic breakthroughs, but real growth is subtle. It's built through repetition. Through patience. Through continuing when nobody is validating your effort. When you stay consistent during doubt, you build self-trust. And self-trust builds confidence. Confidence isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't boast. It's quiet. It's the internal certainty that you can rely on yourself. And that certainty is earned by keeping promises to yourself, especially on the days you want to break them. If you feel like quitting right now, pause. Breathe. But don't walk away. Rest if you must. Adjust your strategy if needed. Slow down if necessary. But do not abandon your direction. The path to success is not about perfection. It's about persistence. What if this exhaustion is not a sign to stop, but a sign that you're closer than you've ever been? What if this frustration is the final layer of resistance before a breakthrough? What if the version of you who succeeds is simply the version who survived this phase? The breaking point is not the end. It's the test. And passing the test doesn't require extraordinary talent. It requires ordinary consistency applied relentlessly. You are not behind. You are not incapable. You are in the process of becoming stronger. Stronger mentally. Stronger emotionally. Stronger in discipline. And strength built during struggle lasts longer than confidence built during comfort. So before you decide to quit, ask yourself one question: will you let temporary emotion define your permanent potential? Stay one more day. Try one more time. Take one more step. Because the difference between average and extraordinary is often the willingness to continue when it would be easier to stop. And the future version of you, the successful, disciplined, mentally strong version, is built in moments exactly like this. Not when it was easy, but when you almost quit and didn't. The version of you that wins, and what it demands. There is a version of you that already has the results you want. The confidence. The discipline. The clarity. The success. That version isn't lucky. That version isn't magically gifted. That version simply decided to operate differently. And the uncomfortable truth is this: you don't become that person by wishing for better circumstances. You become that person by demanding more from yourself. Most people want success. Few are willing to match the standards success requires. We talk about motivation like it's the engine of personal growth, but motivation is unstable. It rises when life feels exciting and disappears when life feels repetitive. Real transformation is built on self-discipline, the ability to stay consistent when your emotions fluctuate. If you study high-performance individuals, you'll notice something powerful. They don't wait to feel ready. They don't negotiate with their excuses. They don't ask, "Do I feel like doing this today?" They ask, "Does this align with who I'm becoming?" That's a success mindset. It's identity-driven, not emotion-driven. The version of you that wins has stronger habits, not stronger hype. Productivity isn't about bursts of energy. It's about systems that operate even when energy is low. Building better habits means reducing the gap between intention and action. It means designing your environment to support focus. It means choosing long-term growth over short-term comfort repeatedly. Overcoming obstacles is less about strength and more about perspective. When challenges appear, most people interpret them as signs to stop. High performers interpret them as proof they're stretching. Mental toughness is not emotional numbness. It's emotional regulation. It's the ability to feel doubt, fear, and frustration, and move forward anyway. You cannot build a powerful future with fragile standards. If your goals require elite discipline, average effort won't sustain them. The winning version of you wakes up with structure, moves with intention, protects time like it's currency. That doesn't mean perfection. It means consistency. Let's talk about staying consistent. Consistency isn't glamorous. It doesn't trend. It doesn't go viral. But it compounds. One disciplined action seems small. Repeated for months, it transforms identity. Identity shapes decisions. Decisions shape destiny. This is the quiet math of personal growth. There will be days when you feel behind. Days when productivity slows. Days when you question your direction. The difference between those who reach their goals and those who fade away is simple. One group adjusts and continues. The other group stops entirely. Stopping resets momentum. Adjusting preserves it. You don't need perfect conditions to elevate your life. You need stronger standards. Raise the standard of how you speak to yourself. Raise the standard of what you tolerate from your habits. Raise the standard of how you respond to setbacks. A success mindset understands that setbacks are data, not identity. Self-discipline is a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes. Start small if you must. Keep promises to yourself in manageable ways. Wake up when you say you will. Finish what you begin. Follow through on minor commitments. Each kept promise builds self-trust. And self-trust builds confidence. Confidence is not built by affirmations alone. It's built by evidence. When you repeatedly prove to yourself that you can stay consistent, your internal narrative shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You start seeing yourself as someone who executes. That shift changes everything. The winning version of you doesn't eliminate fear. It outgrows it. Fear shrinks when action expands. Overthinking fades when execution becomes routine. The more you build better habits, the less room doubt has to dominate your mind. High performance isn't about working endlessly. It's about working deliberately. Rest with intention. Train with focus. Eliminate distractions that dilute your energy. Guard your environment. Protect your mornings. Prioritize deep work. Productivity multiplies when clarity is protected. Ask yourself honestly, what would the disciplined version of you do today? Not the tired version. Not the distracted version. The elevated version. Would they scroll for hours? Or would they move with urgency? Would they avoid discomfort? Or would they lean into growth? Becoming that version requires letting go of the comfort-driven identity. It requires saying no more often. It requires tolerating short-term discomfort for long-term success. This is where most people hesitate. They want results without redefining themselves. Personal growth demands reinvention. You cannot stay the same and expect transformation. Your routines must evolve. Your mindset must sharpen. Your circle may even shift. Growth is selective. It forces alignment. The truth is simple but powerful. The version of you that wins already exists in potential. But potential means nothing without execution. Execution means nothing without consistency. And consistency means nothing without standards. So raise your standards. Choose discipline over distraction. Choose action over overthinking. Choose progress over perfection. You don't need to feel unstoppable to move. You just need to refuse to remain average. Every disciplined choice strengthens your identity. Every focused hour compounds your future. Every time you stay consistent, you distance yourself from the version of you that almost gave up. This is not about intensity. It's about longevity. Sustainable habits. Strategic effort. Mental toughness built through repetition. That's how real success is constructed. The winning version of you is not waiting for the perfect moment. That version creates momentum in imperfect conditions. That version doesn't rely on motivation, it relies on structure. That version doesn't fear obstacles, it expects them and prepares accordingly. And here is the final truth: you don't become extraordinary in one dramatic decision. You become extraordinary in quiet daily choices. So today, act like the person you want to become. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. Because the gap between who you are and who you want to be is not talent. It's standards. And once you raise them, everything changes. The discipline gap: why most people stay stuck. There is a gap between where you are and where you want to be. Most people think that gap is talent, or luck, or connections. But the real gap, the one almost nobody talks about, is discipline. Not loud motivation. Not temporary excitement. Discipline. The discipline gap is the invisible distance between intention and execution. It's the difference between saying "I want to change my life" and actually building daily habits that change it. And this gap is where most dreams quietly fade. You've probably felt it. That surge of motivation after watching something inspiring. That rush of clarity where everything feels possible. You promise yourself this time will be different. You plan. You visualize success. You feel ready. But a few days later, productivity slips. Energy drops. Distractions win. And suddenly the version of you that was so determined feels far away. This isn't because you're incapable. It's because motivation is emotional. And emotions fluctuate. High performance is not built on emotion. It's built on structure. The truth about personal growth is simple but uncomfortable. You will not always feel like doing what is necessary. You will not always feel confident. You will not always feel driven. But the people who build a success mindset understand that feelings are temporary, standards are permanent. Self-discipline is not about punishment. It's about alignment. It's choosing actions that match your long-term goals instead of your short-term comfort. It's waking up when you said you would. It's finishing the work even when it's boring. It's staying consistent when results are invisible. Consistency is not glamorous. Nobody celebrates the 5th quiet workout. Nobody applauds the 100th focused study session. Nobody sees the small daily sacrifices. But those small actions compound. And compounding effort is unstoppable. The discipline gap widens every time you break a promise to yourself. And it shrinks every time you keep one. Think about that carefully. Every time you say you'll start tomorrow and don't, you weaken self-trust. Every time you delay action, you reinforce hesitation. But every time you follow through, even in a small way, you strengthen mental resilience. Mental resilience is not built in dramatic moments. It's built in repetition. It's built when you show up tired. When you choose productivity habits over procrastination. When you overcome setbacks without abandoning your identity. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. Why? Because they chase intensity instead of consistency. Intensity burns out. Discipline builds up. If you want to close the discipline gap, stop chasing perfect conditions. Start designing systems. Build daily habits that remove decision fatigue. Prepare your environment so focus becomes easier than distraction. Structure beats willpower every time. Overcoming setbacks is also part of this process. You will fail. You will miss days. You will lose momentum at times. The difference between those who stay stuck and those who grow is how quickly they return. Falling off track is normal. Staying off track is a choice. A success mindset understands that setbacks are feedback, not identity. You are not your worst day. You are not your temporary inconsistency. What defines you is your pattern over time. High-performance individuals are not perfect. They simply recover faster. They don't let one mistake become a spiral. They reset quickly. They adjust. They move forward. Ask yourself honestly, where is your discipline gap showing up? Is it in your health? Your focus? Your finances? Your goals? Awareness is the first step. You cannot fix what you refuse to acknowledge. But once you see it, you have power. Closing the gap requires one fundamental shift: raise your personal standards. Stop negotiating with excuses. Stop romanticizing potential without action. Stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness comes from movement, not contemplation. Productivity is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters consistently. Eliminate low-value distractions. Protect your time. Guard your mornings. Decide in advance what kind of person you are becoming. Because identity drives behavior. If you see yourself as someone who lacks discipline, your actions will confirm it. If you see yourself as someone who executes regardless of mood, your actions will align with that belief. Build the identity first. Then reinforce it daily. The discipline gap closes when action becomes automatic. When showing up is no longer optional. When your habits operate even when motivation disappears. That's when personal growth accelerates. You don't need massive change overnight. You need sustainable improvement. 1% better each day compounds dramatically over time. Small daily wins build unstoppable confidence. Confidence isn't built by thinking about success. It's built by proving to yourself that you can stay consistent. Every completed task, every disciplined morning, every focused hour is evidence. And evidence builds belief. The life you want is not blocked by lack of ability. It's delayed by lack of consistent execution. That may sound harsh, but it's empowering. Because execution is within your control. You cannot control luck. You cannot control timing. You cannot control external circumstances completely. But you can control your daily habits. You can control whether you show up. You can control whether you follow through. You can control whether you close the gap. The discipline gap is not permanent. It exists only as long as you allow inconsistency to dominate your standards. The moment you decide that your future matters more than your comfort, the gap begins to shrink. This is your opportunity. Not to feel inspired for a moment, but to build a structure that carries you when inspiration fades. Success is not reserved for the gifted. It is earned by the consistent. Personal growth is not accidental. It is constructed daily. So stop measuring your progress by motivation. Start measuring it by execution. Close the discipline gap. And watch how quickly your life begins to shift. The long game, why patience is the ultimate advantage. We live in a world addicted to fast results. Fast money. Fast success. Fast transformation. But real personal growth does not operate on a short timeline. Real change is slow, quiet, and often invisible in the beginning. And this is exactly why most people quit too early. The long game is uncomfortable. It demands patience when you want proof. It demands consistency when you want applause. It demands self-discipline when nobody is watching. But if you learn to master the long game, you gain an unfair advantage over almost everyone around you. Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they lack endurance. The truth about long-term success is simple. It rewards those who can delay gratification. It rewards those who can stay consistent without immediate validation. It rewards those who understand that high performance is not built in weeks, it's built in years. When you first start improving your life, the progress feels exciting. New routines. New goals. New energy. But after a few weeks, the excitement fades. The workouts feel repetitive. The study sessions feel boring. The business idea feels slow. This is where mental toughness becomes critical. Mental toughness is not about being emotionless. It's about staying committed when emotions fluctuate. It's about remembering why you started even when results are not obvious. It's about trusting the process before the process gives you evidence. The long game requires a powerful success mindset. Instead of asking, "Why isn't this working yet?" you ask, "Am I building the right daily habits?" Instead of chasing shortcuts, you refine your systems. Instead of comparing timelines, you focus on execution. Comparison destroys patience. Social media shows you highlights without context. Overnight success stories without years of unseen effort. You start to believe you're behind. You start to doubt your pace. But growth is not a race. It's a construction project. And strong foundations take time. Productivity in the long game looks different. It's not chaotic hustle. It's structured repetition. It's focused effort applied daily. It's eliminating distractions that steal your momentum. It's protecting your energy for meaningful work. Daily habits shape destiny more than rare bursts of motivation. A single disciplined day means little. But disciplined days repeated for months transform identity. Identity drives behavior. Behavior creates outcomes. This is how long-term success is engineered. Overcoming adversity is also part of the long game. There will be setbacks, missed opportunities, unexpected obstacles. Progress will not move in a straight line. But every obstacle carries information. Every failure teaches adjustment. Every delay builds resilience. The difference between those who win long-term and those who fade away is how they interpret adversity. One group sees it as a signal to stop. The other sees it as part of the process. Patience is not passive. It is active persistence. It is showing up again tomorrow. It is refining instead of quitting. It is staying consistent even when excitement disappears. Self-discipline is the bridge between short-term effort and long-term transformation. Without discipline, your goals remain ideas. With discipline, they become inevitable outcomes. Not because they happen instantly, but because you refuse to abandon the path. High performance is not about extreme intensity for short periods. It is about sustainable intensity over long periods. Burnout comes from chasing rapid results. Mastery comes from measured progress. Ask yourself, are you committed to the outcome, or are you committed to the timeline? If you are obsessed with speed, you will feel frustrated constantly. If you are committed to mastery, time becomes your ally. The long game also builds something deeper than external success. It builds character. Patience strengthens emotional control. Consistency strengthens self-trust. Endurance strengthens confidence. These qualities cannot be rushed. Confidence built quickly is fragile. Confidence built slowly is unshakable. When you stay consistent for months, you begin to see subtle shifts. Your focus improves. Your habits solidify. Your self-image evolves. You no longer see yourself as someone who tries. You see yourself as someone who commits. And that shift changes everything. Long-term success requires thinking beyond immediate discomfort. Skipping one workout feels harmless. Avoiding one task feels small. But repeated avoidance compounds negatively just as repeated discipline compounds positively. The long game is about understanding compound effect. Small improvements. Small corrections. Small disciplined actions repeated daily. Over time, these small decisions separate average from extraordinary. You don't need explosive progress. You need steady momentum. Staying consistent when nothing seems to be happening is the ultimate test. That silent phase, where effort feels disconnected from reward, is where most people give up. But often, growth is happening beneath the surface. Roots grow before results show. Trust that process. Mental toughness in the long game means embracing boredom. It means mastering fundamentals. It means repeating simple actions with excellence. It means focusing on what you can control daily. The person who wins long-term is not necessarily the smartest or the most talented. It's the one who refuses to quit during slow seasons. It's the one who understands that patience multiplies power. Imagine where you could be in 1 year if you simply stayed consistent. Not perfect. Not extreme. Just consistent. Imagine the version of you built through disciplined repetition. That version is not created in a moment of inspiration. It is built through months of alignment. The long game is not glamorous. It's not viral. It doesn't produce instant validation. But it produces real transformation. So stop asking how fast you can succeed. Start asking how long you can stay committed. Because when you commit to the long game, you separate yourself from the majority. You stop chasing quick wins. You start building lasting strength. And in a world addicted to speed, patience becomes power. Play the long game. Stay consistent. And let time work in your favor. The standard you tolerate, the life you accept. Your life right now is a reflection of the standards you tolerate. Not your dreams. Not your intentions. Not your potential. Your standards. This is uncomfortable to hear, but powerful to understand. Because the moment you raise your standards, everything begins to shift. Your habits change. Your environment changes. Your expectations change. And eventually, your results change. Most people don't lack ambition. They lack non-negotiables. They say they want personal growth, but tolerate procrastination. They say they want success, but tolerate distraction. They say they want confidence, but tolerate self-doubt. The standard you tolerate becomes the ceiling of your life. A true success mindset is built on one simple decision: what will I no longer accept from myself? Self-discipline begins where excuses end. It begins when you stop negotiating with behaviors that contradict your goals. If you want long-term success, you cannot continue to entertain short-term weakness without limits. This does not mean perfection. It means accountability. High-performance individuals are not flawless. They simply correct themselves quickly. When their productivity habits slip, they reset immediately. When they break a promise to themselves, they restore alignment the next day, not next month. Consistency is not about never falling off track. It's about refusing to stay off track. Overcoming fear is part of raising your standards. Fear often protects comfort. When you decide to elevate your life, fear reacts. It whispers that you might fail, that you might look foolish, that you might not be good enough. But mental resilience grows when you act despite fear. Confidence building does not happen by avoiding discomfort. It happens by entering it voluntarily. Each time you do something difficult, your identity expands. Each time you honor your commitments, your self-trust deepens. Self-trust is the foundation of confidence. And self-trust is built through kept promises. If you say you will wake up early, wake up early. If you say you will train, train. If you say you will focus, eliminate distractions. Not because it's easy, but because it aligns with who you are becoming. The person you want to become has higher standards than the person you are today. That's not criticism. That's growth. Personal growth requires shedding old tolerance levels. You cannot build an extraordinary life while accepting average effort. You cannot expect discipline while tolerating chaos. You cannot demand excellence while allowing inconsistency. The life you accept expands or contracts according to what you allow daily. Look honestly at your environment. Does it support high performance? Or does it encourage comfort? Look at your habits. Do they move you toward long-term success? Or do they temporarily soothe discomfort? Productivity is not about doing more tasks. It's about aligning actions with standards. When your standards are clear, decisions become easier. You no longer debate whether to act. You simply execute. This is what separates those who stay stuck from those who evolve. The stuck wait for motivation. The evolving operate from standards. Motivation fades. Standards endure. Mental resilience grows when standards are non-negotiable. Even on difficult days, you maintain baseline discipline. You may reduce intensity, but you never abandon identity. That identity is powerful. When you see yourself as someone who follows through, your behavior aligns automatically. You no longer rely on emotional peaks. You rely on structure. Structure builds stability. Stability builds momentum. Momentum builds transformation. Raising your standards does not mean becoming harsh with yourself. It means becoming honest. Honest about your habits. Honest about your distractions. Honest about your fears. Overcoming fear requires confronting it repeatedly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Daily. Speak up when it's uncomfortable. Try again when you fail. Continue when progress feels slow. This is how mental resilience compounds. There is a version of you that refuses to tolerate mediocrity. That version protects time. Guards energy. Chooses growth over comfort. That version is not far away. It emerges the moment you stop accepting less from yourself. High performance is not extreme behavior. It is disciplined consistency. It is raising your minimum standard. Instead of aiming for maximum bursts of effort, focus on raising your baseline. Make your normal stronger. If your normal becomes disciplined, progress becomes automatic. Long-term success is not created by rare heroic actions. It is created by everyday excellence. Excellence in small decisions. Excellence in daily habits. Excellence in how you respond to setbacks. You do not need to overhaul your life overnight. You need to identify one standard you will no longer compromise. Maybe it's your morning routine. Maybe it's your focus time. Maybe it's your physical health. Choose one. Commit fully. Then expand. Each elevated standard strengthens your identity. Each strengthened identity narrows the gap between where you are and where you want to be. The standard you tolerate defines your trajectory. If you tolerate distraction, you will live distracted. If you tolerate inconsistency, you will live inconsistently. If you tolerate discipline, you will live empowered. It is not about being perfect. It is about being intentional. Ask yourself today, what behavior no longer aligns with the future I want? What excuse am I ready to retire? What habit must evolve? Raising your standards will feel uncomfortable at first. Growth always does. But discomfort is temporary. Regret lasts longer. You are capable of more structure, more focus, more strength, more discipline. But capability means nothing without expectation. Expect more from yourself. Not out of pressure. Out of respect. Because the life you accept is the life you reinforce. And the moment you decide that average is no longer acceptable, your actions begin to rise to meet that decision. Raise the standard. And watch your life rise with it. The decision that changes everything. At the end of all strategies, habits, systems, and mindset shifts, there is one thing that determines your future more than anything else. A decision. Not a loud announcement. Not a dramatic breakthrough. Just a quiet internal line you draw, and refuse to cross backward. The decision to stop living beneath your potential. The decision to commit to personal growth even when it's inconvenient. The decision to build self-discipline not when you feel inspired, but when you feel tired. Long-term success does not begin with talent. It begins with a decision. A decision that you will no longer abandon yourself when things get uncomfortable. Most people wait for the perfect time to change. They wait for clarity. They wait for confidence. They wait for motivation. But high-performance individuals understand something powerful. Clarity comes from action, not contemplation. You don't think your way into transformation. You act your way into it. That first disciplined action, waking up earlier, finishing the task, keeping your promise, creates momentum. Momentum builds identity. Identity builds consistency. And consistency builds results. Everything begins with the decision to show up differently. Overcoming adversity is not about avoiding hardship. It's about choosing your response when hardship appears. You cannot control every obstacle. You cannot predict every setback. but you can control your standard. When you decide that quitting is no longer an option, your behavior shifts automatically. You stop asking if it's convenient. You stop asking if it's easy. You start asking if it aligns with your goals. This is the essence of a success mindset. Self-discipline is simply the repeated execution of that decision. It is reinforcing the identity you chose. Every time you stay consistent, you vote for the person you are becoming. Confidence building is not separate from discipline. It is the byproduct of discipline. Each kept promise becomes evidence. Each completed challenge becomes proof. Over time, doubt loses its authority because your actions contradict it. Mental strength is not loud. It does not seek validation. It is quiet endurance. It is waking up when you don't feel like it. It is staying focused when distractions tempt you. It is protecting your productivity habits when chaos tries to disrupt them. The decision to change your life will not feel comfortable. Growth rarely does. But discomfort is temporary. Regret compounds. Imagine 1 year from now. Imagine if you stayed consistent. Imagine if you strengthened your habits instead of restarting them repeatedly. Imagine if you stopped negotiating with excuses and started honoring your commitments daily. That future is not unrealistic. It is simply delayed by hesitation. The truth about long-term success is that it favors the committed. Not the most talented. Not the most connected. The most committed. Commitment means continuing when results are slow. Commitment means adjusting when plans fail. Commitment means trusting the process before the process rewards you. Productivity is not about constant hustle. It is about focused alignment. It is about directing energy toward meaningful actions daily. Eliminate what drains you. Strengthen what builds you. High performance is built on small, consistent wins. You don't need to dominate every area of your life immediately. You need to win the day. Then repeat. Consistency compounds quietly. Just like inconsistency does. If you break promises to yourself repeatedly, your confidence erodes quietly. If you keep promises to yourself repeatedly, your confidence strengthens quietly. Over time, those quiet shifts define your life. This is why the decision matters so much. The decision is not about intensity. It is about permanence. It is deciding that personal growth is no longer optional. That discipline is no longer conditional. That your future deserves structure, not chaos. You will still face doubt. You will still face adversity. You will still feel tired at times. But once the decision is made, those emotions lose power. They become temporary experiences, not permanent identities. Overcoming adversity becomes easier when quitting is removed from the equation. When retreat is no longer the default response, progress becomes inevitable. The strongest individuals are not those who never struggle. They are those who decide, once and for all, that struggle will not define them. You do not need another motivational moment. You need a standard. You need a commitment. You need to choose who you are becoming, and align your daily habits accordingly. Everything you have learned throughout this journey, about self-discipline, about consistency, about mental resilience, leads to this moment. A quiet internal declaration. I will no longer live beneath my potential. Say it once. Mean it fully. Then prove it daily. The life you want is not built in one extraordinary action. It is built in ordinary actions performed with extraordinary consistency. Your future self is not waiting for you to feel ready. They are waiting for you to decide. And once that decision is made, truly made, everything changes. Not instantly, but permanently. Make the decision. Stay consistent. And build the life that reflects your highest standard. What if this isn't just another motivational video, but the moment your standards actually change? You didn't watch this by accident. Something inside you is tired of repeating the same cycle, starting strong, losing momentum, doubting yourself, restarting again. And if you've made it all the way here, it means one powerful thing: you're not done fighting for your potential. Everything we talked about, self-discipline, consistency, mental strength, personal growth, high-performance habits, comes down to one truth. Your future will be shaped by what you do after this video ends. Not tomorrow. Not next month. Today. Most people consume motivation. Very few apply it. The difference between those who transform their life and those who stay stuck isn't information, it's execution. And right now, you're standing at a decision point. You can close this video and go back to autopilot. Or you can take one action that your future self would be proud of. Here's the deeper question. What if the life you want is waiting on the other side of disciplined consistency? Not hype. Not shortcuts. But focused daily action. The version of you that builds long-term success doesn't rely on temporary motivation. That version builds systems. Protects productivity. Raises standards. Moves with intention. That version understands that real confidence is built privately, through kept promises and repeated effort. And this channel exists for one reason: to help you build that version. If you're serious about leveling up your mindset, strengthening your self-discipline, mastering productivity habits, and developing unstoppable mental resilience, then this is where you belong. Every video is designed to push you beyond comfort and into growth. Not surface-level inspiration, but practical mindset shifts for real transformation. Here's your challenge. Before you leave, comment one standard you're raising starting today. Make it public. Make it real. When you declare it, you reinforce it. Then subscribe, not casually, but intentionally. Because the next video might be the one that hits exactly when you're about to doubt yourself again. And consistency isn't just for your habits, it's for what you feed your mind. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next step in this journey of personal growth and high performance. Your environment shapes your outcomes. Surround yourself with content that strengthens your discipline instead of weakening it. And one more thing. The algorithm rewards engagement, but your life rewards execution. So like the video if it challenged you. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message about long-term success and overcoming adversity. Because sometimes one shift in perspective can change someone's entire trajectory. This isn't the end. It's the starting line. In the next video, we're going deeper into the hidden habits that silently destroy momentum and how to rebuild focus when your productivity collapses. If you've ever struggled with staying consistent or rebuilding confidence after setbacks, you won't want to miss it. The question is no longer can you change? The question is, will you stay consistent long enough to see it? Your potential is real. Your discipline is trainable. Your mindset is expandable. But only if you commit. So take a breath. Make the decision. Raise the standard. And I'll see you in the next video, where we continue building the strongest version of you. This is your era of growth. Don't waste it.